You don't belong here. Move to the back, or I'll call the captain. The words snapped across the first-class cabin like a whip. Heads turned, newspapers lowered. Silence fell. Seat 1A was occupied by a little black girl, maybe 6 years old, in a crisp white dress with shiny black shoes and soft curls pinned back with a powder blue ribbon. She sat still, hands folded neatly on her lap. Calm, quiet, but she didn't move. She didn't cry. She just looked up at the flight attendant standing over her. Tall, blonde, tight smile. Name tag reading Karen in gold. I said, Karen repeated, louder now. You need to move. This is first class, for premium passengers. The girl blinked, voice soft. This is my seat. Karen leaned in, eyes narrowing. Oh, really? She sneered. And who paid for it? Your imaginary friend? The businessman in 1C shifted in his seat. A woman with designer sunglasses halfway down her nose raised her brows. A soft murmur rippled down the aisle. Still, the little girl didn't flinch. She simply reached under her sleeve and gently tapped her bracelet. One tap. No sound. You might have missed it, but someone far away wouldn't. Have you ever seen someone mistreated just because of how they looked? Would you speak up or stay silent? Tell us where you're watching from, and stick around, because what happens next? Grounded 3 airlines and froze $1.3 billion in one afternoon. Karen folded her arms and scoffed. I don't care who you think you are, she said, voice growing sharper. You don't sit here. You don't belong here. I'm not moving, the girl replied again. Calm, clear. Her feet didn't even touch the floor. Karen looked around for support, but first class was no longer her stage. It was a spotlight. She bent closer and hissed, If you don't get up right now, I will physically remove you. And then, as casually as flipping a switch, she slapped the child across the face. Gasps exploded from every row. The sound echoed like a gunshot in church. The little girl's head turned with the force of it, but she didn't scream. She didn't sob. She turned back, slowly, eyes steady, cheek burning red. Karen stood frozen, as if she'd shocked herself. Her lips trembled. Her authority cracked. Karen! The younger flight attendant, Clara, rushed forward. What the hell are you doing? She wasn't listening, Karen snapped, suddenly on the defensive. I didn't mean... She's a child, Clara whispered, horrified. I don't care, Karen barked. She doesn't have a ticket for this seat. Across the aisle, the businessman in 1C stood up. Enough, he said. His voice didn't rise, but it landed like a brick. What you just did was assault. Karen looked at him, at Clara, at the horrified faces around her, but no one backed her up, not one. Even the woman with the sunglasses shook her head slowly, whispering to her partner, This is bad, real bad. But the girl, Zahara Ellis, remained still, silent. Her bracelet glowed a soft red pulse. Meanwhile, 2,400 miles away, inside a government complex in Geneva, a high-security tablet buzzed quietly on a polished glass table. Camille Ellis didn't blink. She excused herself from a policy summit on international ethics compliance and walked into a secure corridor with her assistant behind her. The screen read, Zahara Protocol. Code red target. Minor. Age 6. Flagged. In-flight discrimination. Physical assault. Airline. Sky Continental. Ethos core corruption detected. Camille tapped into the interface. No hesitation. No anger. Just action. Override confirmed. Initiating red flag emergency protocol. Her assistant gasped. Wait, Camille, this affects over 100 global routes. Camille locked eyes with her. Let it. Back on the plane, Karen was pacing now, muttering to herself. These people think they can buy a seat and act like they own the plane. Clara stood by the galley, hands shaking. She looked at Zahara, then at the manifest, then at Zahara again. She picked up the passenger list and scanned the name. 1A. Zahara Ellis. Guardian. Camille Ellis. Her face went pale. Oh no, Clara whispered. Oh no. The intercom dinged. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've just been instructed to divert to Frankfurt Airport for an unscheduled landing. Please remain seated. We apologize for the inconvenience." Karen's jaw dropped. "What? That's not protocol. What is going on?" Then came the second ding. The cockpit door opened. The captain stepped out. He looked directly at Zahara, then at Karen. "Miss Dawson," he said to the lead flight attendant, "please return to your station. You'll be relieved upon landing." Karen's voice cracked. "What? Why? I was just trying to maintain order." The captain's face was pale, eyes hard. "The passenger in 1A is the daughter of Camille Ellis." Silence. You could hear the collective gasp. A man 2 rows back muttered, "The Camille Ellis?" The businessman in 1C let out a breath and sat down. "That explains everything." Karen stumbled backward, her face draining of color. She whispered, "Oh God." Zahara finally looked out the window. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She just leaned her cheek against the glass, red and warm from the slap, and let the clouds roll by. She had said almost nothing. She had cried not once, but her silence was louder than anything in the cabin, and the world had already started listening. The moment the wheels touched down in Frankfurt, you could feel the tension crackle in the cabin like static. Nobody clapped. Nobody said a word. The captain's voice came on again, calm but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived ahead of schedule. Please remain seated while we coordinate with ground control for a brief stop. Thank you for your cooperation." Every passenger knew this wasn't routine. The flight was never supposed to land in Germany, not unless someone forced it to. In seat 1A, Zahara Ellis didn't move. Her hands were still neatly folded in her lap, her posture calm. The red imprint on her cheek had faded to a light pink. Her eyes were fixed out the window, watching airport personnel move with quiet urgency. Clara, the junior flight attendant, stood by the galley, gripping the clipboard. She hadn't made eye contact with Karen once since the incident. Karen, meanwhile, was frozen in place near the service station. Her face had gone pale. Her arms were crossed, but her confidence had vanished. The whispers from passengers had grown bolder now, no longer hidden behind menus or magazines. "That little girl. Isn't she someone important? I heard she's the daughter of Camille Ellis." "The Camille Ellis? The ethics exec?" "More than that. She controls the ethos core system. My husband's firm had to pass her compliance last year to keep their aviation contract." Karen heard it all, and with every word, her throat tightened. A black SUV pulled up beside the aircraft. It didn't have any airline logos. It didn't need them. 2 individuals in tailored black suits stepped out. One held a slim briefcase. The other, a small tablet already lit with secure access credentials. No hesitation, no announcements. Just quiet coordination as they ascended the mobile staircase rolled to the aircraft. The cabin door hissed open. The pilot stepped forward to greet them, nodding with a kind of respect that told everyone watching, "Whoever's coming in now doesn't answer to us. We answer to them." And then she stepped in. Camille Ellis. She didn't wear anything flashy, just a black pantsuit, no jewelry, no entourage. But her presence, it shifted the air in the cabin. She didn't scan the crowd. She didn't look for the culprit. Her eyes went straight to her daughter. "See," she said softly. Zahara looked up, and for the first time since the flight began, she smiled. Camille walked to her and knelt beside the seat. "Are you okay?" she asked, gently brushing Zahara's cheek. Zahara nodded. "I tapped it, just once." Camille's jaw tightened, but her expression remained calm. "You did exactly right," she whispered. "I've got it from here." Karen stood rooted in place, as if hoping invisibility might save her. It didn't. Camille stood and turned to face the crew. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was heard by every soul on board. "Which of you touched my daughter?" No one moved. The businessman in 1C didn't even blink. He just pointed. "She did," he said, nodding toward Karen. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came. Camille didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Name?" she asked. "Karen Dawson," the captain replied grimly. Camille nodded once, then turned to her assistant. "Flag Dawson under assault protocol. Effective immediately. Notify FAA, EU Aviation, and Transport Canada that she's no longer certified for international crew work." Karen gasped. "You can't just—" Camille looked at her, and that was enough. "You hit a 6-year-old child. My child. In front of 20 witnesses. You judged her before asking a single question. And worse, you were warned." Karen shook her head. "Warned? I didn't know—" "No," Camille said. "You didn't care." Across the aisle, one passenger muttered, "About time someone said it." Karen's eyes darted around, searching for backup. No one moved. Even Clara had stepped behind Camille's assistant, quietly standing out of the way. Camille looked around the cabin now. "To the rest of you, on behalf of my family and this airline, I'm sorry you had to witness that. This is not how we treat people. Not in my company, not in my industry, not anymore." Someone clapped. Then another. Within seconds, the entire first-class cabin erupted in applause. Not loud or rowdy, but honest. It wasn't just for Camille. It was for Zahara. Karen tried one last time. "I didn't mean to. Please, I wasn't thinking—" Camille turned to the 2 agents behind her. "Remove her from the aircraft." Karen stepped back. "Wait, what is this? I'm being arrested?" "No," Camille said coolly. "You're being held accountable." As Karen was escorted down the aisle, eyes lowered, dignity in tatters, the passengers remained silent. No jeers, no mockery. Just the sound of justice finally walking upright. Zahara watched her go. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply reached up, unfastened her seatbelt, and stood beside her mother. Camille placed a hand on her daughter's back, and for the first time since the bracelet pulsed red, Zahara exhaled. 30 minutes later, the story was everywhere. Social media exploded. Zahara Ellis, she didn't flinch, #passenger ethics. Now journalists picked up the Ethos Corps breach alert within the hour. Stocks in Sky Continental dropped 8.4% before lunch. The FAA called an emergency press conference. So did the EU Transport Council. Camille Ellis didn't attend either. She was too busy uploading a document to the Ethos Corps portal. Passenger Ethics Accord. Emergency ratification triggered. It had been sitting on her desk for 2 years, ignored, rejected, until today. By sunset, the damage was measured in billions. 1.3 billion in credit and route contracts frozen. 3 major airline alliances suspended from 142 airports worldwide. FAA, EU Aviation, and Transport Canada forced to sign off on the Passenger Ethics Accord, Camille's long-awaited reform package. And all of it because one little girl, sitting in seat 1A, didn't raise her voice. She just raised a signal. Later that night, Zahara fell asleep on her mother's shoulder during the ride back to Boston. Camille held her close, eyes forward. She knew this wasn't over. Tomorrow, people would scream, deny, deflect, politicize. But for tonight, there was peace and a quiet knowing. The skies had changed, not because of lawsuits or headlines, but because one child stayed calm and the system finally listened. The video leaked before noon. It wasn't even a full clip, just 38 seconds. Karen Dawson's voice, her slap, Zahara's unmoving face. And the moment Camille Ellis walked onto the plane like gravity had changed direction. By 2:00 p.m., it had 3.1 million views. By 4:00, #Zahara Didn't Flinch was trending in 17 countries. And somewhere in Chicago, a woman named Maya Jennings, sitting alone in her car outside O'Hare, finally took a deep breath and opened her laptop. She wasn't famous. She wasn't rich. Just another junior flight attendant on a regional airline. But she had seen this kind of thing before, more than once. And now she had a choice. Stay quiet like always, or finally speak up. She clicked record. Meanwhile, in Boston, Camille sat at the long table in her private office, staring at a tablet. She had spent the last 6 hours coordinating emergency ethics audits across all carriers in the Ethos core system. Her voice was calm in every call, efficient, direct. But now, for the first time since the incident, she allowed herself a moment of stillness. Across from her, Zahara lay curled up on a small couch, fast asleep under a soft gray blanket. The pinkness on her cheek had faded. Camille watched her breathing for a moment, steady and soft, then turned her attention back to the screen. A new submission had just been logged under the whistleblower channel in the passenger ethics portal. From M. Jennings, Flight Crew ID 1284576. Subject: This has been happening for years. Camille tapped to open the video. Maya's face appeared on screen, nervous but resolute. Hi, my name is Maya. I've worked in aviation for 7 years. I've stayed quiet a long time, too long. But after what I saw this week, I can't anymore. This isn't the first time a child of color has been treated like they don't belong in first class. I've seen colleagues question black mothers traveling alone, make them prove they bought their seats. I've seen older white passengers get complimentary upgrades while others get second looks, second questions, second doubts. The way Karen treated that little girl, that wasn't a fluke, that was a pattern. And it's time the pattern ends. Then the screen went black. Camille closed her eyes for a moment. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just exhaled. Then forwarded the video to the FAA EU Aviation Board and the International Airline Ethics Committee. Within the hour, whistleblower submissions jumped 700%. The story had gone beyond viral now. It was systemic. Morning news anchors struggled to pronounce Ethos core, while evening panels debated whether airlines should even be allowed to operate without ethical oversight. Camille stayed out of it. She didn't give interviews. She didn't post. She let the voices rise, because they weren't hers. They were the voices of people who had been quiet for too long. At a press conference the next day, the CEO of Sky Continental Airlines stepped up to the mic, red-faced and defensive. He read a statement. "We deeply regret the unfortunate misunderstanding involving Ms. Ellis's daughter and our flight crew." Camille watched it live from her office. Her phone buzzed. It was Clara, the young flight attendant from Zahara's flight. "Did you see the press conference?" Camille replied with one word, "Unfortunately," then added, "Would you be willing to speak?" There was a pause. Then Clara typed back, "Yes." 3 hours later, Clara's recorded statement was uploaded to the passenger ethics portal. It wasn't flashy. No edits, no music. Just her, standing in her living room, nervous hands but steady voice. "I was on flight 308. I saw everything. I wanted to speak up sooner, but I was afraid I'd lose my job. But I can't stay quiet anymore." Zahara was calm. She didn't do anything wrong. She was polite. She was respectful. She just didn't look like what Karen expected. And that was enough for her to be treated like she didn't belong. She does belong, and so do all the other kids who've been made to feel small because someone decided they weren't the right type. Her voice trembled at the end, but she didn't stop. Camille Ellis didn't just protect her daughter. She created a system that now protects all of us, and I'm proud to be part of that change. By the end of the week, over 4,000 anonymous crew reports were submitted. 19 flight attendants across 6 airlines were suspended pending ethics reviews. 3 airline CEOs were summoned before the International Aviation Ethics Board. And the Passenger Ethics Accord, once rejected quietly by nearly every major carrier, was now on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Headline: "One child, one slap, 1.3B frozen, the day airlines were forced to grow up." Zahara didn't know most of that. She was back home, coloring a picture of a cloud with a smiling face. But she did know something had changed. When her mom picked her up from school Friday afternoon, the principal knelt down beside her and said, "You're very brave, Zahara." Zahara blinked. "Why?" "Because you didn't yell," the principal said. "But you still got the world to listen." That night, Camille sat down with her daughter and said, "I have to go to Washington next week. I've been invited to testify in front of the Senate." Zahara looked up. "Why?" "They want to know what happened. and how to make sure it never happens again. Zahara thought for a moment, then nodded. Will you tell them I didn't cry? Camille smiled softly. I'll tell them you didn't flinch. The room was colder than it needed to be. Camille Ellis sat at the center of a long oak table, back straight, hands folded. Behind her, the seal of the United States Senate loomed large, golden, intimidating, unimpressed. To her left, a senior official from the Department of Transportation shuffled his notes nervously. To her right, a row of airline executives whispered to each other behind cupped hands. And in front of her, at the head of the chamber, sat the Senate Committee on Transportation and Aviation Ethics. A row of familiar names and unfamiliar faces. Reporters lined the back wall. The gallery was full. C-SPAN's red recording light glowed quietly in the corner. Ms. Ellis, the chairwoman finally said, adjusting her microphone. Thank you for joining us today. We're aware your schedule is substantial. Camille nodded once. Thank you, Senator. What we're not clear on, the senator continued, is how a single event on a commercial flight triggered an international freeze of $1.3 billion in airline capital and forced 4 global carriers into emergency ethics audits. Camille met her gaze calmly. That's because the incident wasn't singular. It was a symptom. The system had been quietly failing for years. My daughter just happened to be the last silent victim before the alarm finally sounded. A murmur stirred behind her. Cameras clicked softly. The senator raised an eyebrow. You're referring to the incident involving your 6-year-old daughter, Zahara. I'm referring to the slap she didn't cry for, Camille replied, and the silence that followed it. Because that silence triggered a protocol the industry helped me build, then chose to ignore. Another murmur. One of the airline CEOs leaned forward, frowning. With all due respect, Ms. Ellis, protocols like Ethos Core were never meant to disrupt operations on that scale. Camille turned slightly toward him. With all due respect, sir, Ethos Core was designed to protect passengers from systemic misconduct. If your operations rely on unchecked discrimination to stay on schedule, maybe it's not the protocol that's broken. That shut him up. The room paused. The chairwoman leaned forward. Ms. Ellis, walk us through the moment the protocol was activated. Not from the dashboard, from you. Camille inhaled slowly, then exhaled. I was in Geneva, finishing a closed-door session on ethics compliance with EU transport ministers. My tablet lit up with a code red alert. Source, Seat 1A, Zahara Ellis. You had your daughter monitored? No, Camille said gently. I gave her a bracelet, a quiet one, so that if she ever felt unsafe, even when no adult would believe her, someone still would. That struck something deep in the room. Mothers in the gallery nodded. Even the senator across from her shifted uncomfortably. Camille continued, her voice low but unwavering. The system didn't trigger because someone raised their voice. It triggered because no one else did. She paused, letting that land. That's what makes Ethos Core dangerous to the status quo. It doesn't wait for outrage. It responds to imbalance, quietly, but swiftly. An older senator from Georgia, white-haired, traditional, leaned into his mic. Ms. Ellis, I reviewed the footage. The girl, your daughter, never even spoke up. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, she didn't call for help. Camille nodded. That's correct. So, why the overreaction? Camille turned to him slowly. It wasn't an overreaction, she said, voice like glass. It was the first appropriate reaction. You see it as disruptive because the system is so used to ignoring passengers like her that any correction feels like a threat. He blinked, then said nothing. The chairwoman looked around the room, then back to Camille. And what would you say to those who claim the airline industry doesn't need another layer of bureaucracy? Camille offered a faint, almost sad smile. I'd say bureaucracy didn't slap my daughter. A uniform did. By the time the hearing wrapped, Camille had said less than 600 words. But she didn't need more, because by then, the story had already become something bigger. That same afternoon, Clara, now publicly recognized as a key witness, was asked to testify at a separate ethics review panel. Her words were clear. "I didn't speak up right away, and I regret that. But Ms. Ellis didn't punish me. She promoted me, because she knew that silence is something we learn. Courage is what we teach next." Across the country, Maya Jennings had been invited onto Good Morning America. Her voice shook when she spoke, but it was broadcast live to millions. "I stayed quiet because I thought I had to, but that little girl gave me permission to stop." The ripple effect didn't stop at airlines. Amtrak requested access to Ethos Core. 2 cruise lines announced they were piloting Zahara protocols on family routes. A major hotel chain quietly reached out to Camille's office with one question: "Can your system audit hospitality too?" And Camille? She went home. She had no interest in being a media face or social activist. She was just a mother, a builder, a strategist who designed systems that spoke up when people couldn't. That evening, as she tucked Zahara into bed, her daughter looked up and asked, "Did you talk to the big people today?" Camille smiled. "I did." "Were they mad?" "Some," she admitted. "Did you cry?" Camille paused. "No," she said, "but I listened." Zahara rolled over, hugging her stuffed bear. "Good. Listening is harder than yelling." Camille stood there for a long moment, hand resting on the edge of the bed, then whispered, "Yes, yes it is." 2 weeks after the hearing, Camille Ellis sat in the corner booth of a private club in Manhattan. The table was round. The voices were sharp. The suits were pressed. The men in front of her weren't airline executives. They weren't senators or ethics board members. They were something else. They were investors. Power didn't wear name tags in rooms like this. It wore cufflinks, black cards, and private jet badges. The type of men who didn't get dragged into hearings. The type who wrote checks that made hearings disappear. And right now, they were very interested in Camille Ellis. More specifically, in owning a piece of what she'd built. "Camille," said the man across from her, Charles Braxton, founder of Apex Equity, worth somewhere north of $7 billion. "You've done something no one else has managed in decades." She didn't respond. She simply stirred her tea. He smiled, unbothered. "You've created a global ethical pressure system that actually works. One little signal and you brought half the industry to its knees. That's not power. That's infrastructure." "To be clear," Camille said without looking up, "I didn't bring them to their knees. They fell because they were leaning too hard on the wrong people." Laughter around the table. Light, performative. Charles leaned in. "Fair, but here's the thing. Ethos Core is already at scale. Now it needs reach. You've got credibility, Camille. What you don't have is distribution." She met his eyes. "You think I built this to sell it?" "I think," he said, steepling his fingers, "if you want this thing to go global, trains, schools, hospitals, you're gonna need partners. Big ones." Camille didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked out the window. Below them, the city pulsed with speed. Taxis, bikes, noise. A blur of lives moving too fast to notice who was being overlooked. Then she said, "My daughter didn't flinch when a woman slapped her across the face." Silence at the table. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She didn't even speak. She just sent a signal. And in that moment, everything changed. Not because I made a scene, but because I built a system that could speak without me. Charles shifted. Camille leaned forward. "So no, Charles. I'm not here to scale with you. I'm here to make sure this never has to be scaled. Because dignity shouldn't depend on someone rich enough to own a seat at this table." Then she stood up. Calm. Collected. The meeting was over. Back at her office in Boston, Camille walked into the data room. Screens filled with dashboards, live updates, compliance pings. A soft chime signaled a new message. It was from the Ministry of Transport, South Africa. Subject line: "Request, Zahara Protocol Pilot for National Rail Network." She read it once, then smiled. Across the country, things weren't as quiet. News networks were spinning faster than they could track. Some praised the changes, some called it overcorrection. Some branded Camille a tech tyrant. Others asked why it took a billionaire's child to force change. And then there were the smear pieces. One headline read, "Ethics or Elitism? Inside the Secret Power of Camille Ellis." Another, "Weaponized Morality, when silence becomes a threat." Camille read none of it, but her assistant printed them all. She kept them in a folder titled, "Expected." Then came the letter, sealed in a cream-colored envelope, hand-delivered by Federal Courier, from the President's office. Camille opened it carefully. "Ms. Ellis, your testimony before the Senate committee has sparked unprecedented momentum. We believe it's time to institutionalize ethics infrastructure across national transportation systems. The administration would like to invite you to serve as senior advisor on passenger dignity and systemic compliance under the Department of Transportation. We recognize the weight of this request and the cost of accepting it, but we also believe the system that listens quietly is the one that speaks loudest when it matters most. We hope to hear your answer soon. Office of the President." Camille read it twice, then once more. She didn't smile. She didn't gasp. She folded the letter, placed it on her desk, and didn't answer it that day. Instead, she drove to pick Zahara up from school. They stopped at a bookstore. Zahara picked a graphic novel. Camille bought it without question. On the drive home, Zahara asked, "Why are they talking about us on TV again?" Camille kept her eyes on the road. "Because sometimes," she said softly, "truth makes people nervous." Zahara thought about that for a while, then asked, "Are you gonna go work for the president?" Camille chuckled. "Why? You trying to get rid of me?" Zahara grinned. "Only if they give you a jet." That night, Camille sat on the balcony, watching the lights of Boston flicker below. She didn't want fame. She didn't want legacy. She wanted systems that outlasted headlines. That's why she hadn't licensed Ethos Core, why she hadn't IPO'd it. Because some things shouldn't be up for sale. She opened her laptop, typed a reply to Office of the President. "I accept. On one condition. We don't build another system people have to trust. We build one they can verify. With dignity. Camille Ellis." She hit send, then closed the laptop and looked up at the stars. The carpet was thick. The walls were white. The air carried the kind of silence that only power could afford. Camille Ellis stood just inside the Roosevelt room of the West Wing, her signature coat still draped over one arm, her other hand resting gently on the handle of her laptop bag. Not a handbag, not a designer tote, a laptop bag. Plain, functional, deliberate. Two aides whispered at the far end of the room, stealing glances. They weren't sure if they were looking at a CEO, a mother, or a ghost from the headlines. And Camille? She didn't look at them at all. She looked at the table, the long rectangular one where presidents met with CEOs, generals, and foreign heads of state. The one Zahara had once called the table where they fix things. A door opened. "Ms. Ellis, we're ready for you." She stepped in. The room on the other side wasn't the Situation Room. It wasn't a press conference. It was something far more dangerous. A negotiation. Waiting at the far end of the room were 7 officials. One from the Department of Transportation, one from Homeland Security, one from the FAA, 2 from International Aviation Boards, and 2, quietly, without nameplates, from private industry. The president wasn't in the room. This was the pre-call, the table before the real table. "Ms. Ellis," said a man in a steel gray suit, "we appreciate you joining us. There's been substantial discussion around Ethos Core and its unintended consequences." Camille didn't sit. She raised an eyebrow. "You mean the system that prevented another child from being humiliated mid-air?" A pause. The FAA rep spoke next. "We're not against the mission, but the methods are precise," Camille cut in. "Because precision is the only language power understands." One of the industry men frowned. "This isn't about ideology. It's about risk." Camille finally stepped forward. "And that's why I'm here. to redefine what risk actually looks like. Because for years, you've measured it in dollars, delays, and reputational flare-ups. She set her laptop bag on the table. Quiet. Steady. But for people like my daughter, risk looked like a seat she had a right to, and a woman who thought she didn't belong there. Silence. She opened the laptop. The screen blinked on. Live dashboard. Ethos Core Alpha. Real-time compliance updates from 46 airports and 19 domestic carriers. One feed showed a green flag, a flight attendant offering apology after a microaggression was flagged. Another feed showed a yellow, delay in response to a wheelchair access request. And then, a red flag pulsed, highlighting a private airline in Dubai that had just ejected a biracial couple mid-check-in for security concerns. Every person at the table stared. "This is not a PR stunt," Camille said. "This is real-time, verified, logged behavior across borders. Not cameras, not hearsay, data." The Homeland Security officer cleared her throat. "We're concerned about the platform becoming politicized. If ethics scores start determining access to federal routes..." Camille closed the laptop gently. "I didn't come here to threaten you. I came to offer you the future." She looked each one in the eye. "But let me be clear, that future won't wait for you." Across town, a press conference was starting at a small civil rights foundation in D.C. Clara, now officially promoted as ethics officer at Horizon Air, was speaking. "People ask me why I stayed quiet. The truth is, I thought silence kept me safe. But what I've learned is this: safety that relies on silence isn't safety at all. It's fear." The clip would go viral before lunch. Back at the West Wing, Camille was finally escorted into the Oval Office. The president stood, smiling. Not politician smiling. Human. "Ms. Ellis." "Mr. President." They didn't shake hands. They didn't need to. He gestured to a smaller round table by the window. "You've shaken up a lot of boardrooms this month." Camille sat down, composed. Sometimes a quiet correction feels like an earthquake to people who never notice the fault lines. They talked for 30 minutes. About Sahara, about systemic ethics, about code versus culture, about how America trains its service workers to serve efficiency over empathy. And finally, "Camille," the president said, leaning forward, "we'd like to make this national. Mandate the Sahara Protocol across every federally funded airport by next quarter. Are you willing to lead that?" She didn't smile. She nodded. "Yes, but it doesn't start with airports." The president raised an eyebrow. Camille continued. "It starts with who gets to define what dignity looks like." That evening, Camille left the White House through the staff exit. No press, no lights. At home, Zahara was already asleep. A note was tucked under Camille's pillow in crayon. "Mommy, thank you for fixing the big people." Camille held it to her chest for a long, quiet minute. Across the country, unseen by most, dominoes had begun to fall. 3 major airports signed on to ethos verification trials. A private school in San Diego requested access to the protocol. A hotel chain suspended 12 staff members after internal data leaks showed racial bias patterns. Data cross-matched by Camille's dashboard. This wasn't a tech platform anymore. This was a movement without protest signs. No chants, no marches, just logs, actions, and accountability. It started with a leak. Not a scandalous one. Not the kind that made headlines. Just a tiny breach. 1 flight, 1 flagged report, 1 missing audit timestamp. Camille Ellis sat at her desk reviewing the report herself. It was flagged internally as minor latency and data sync. But something didn't sit right. There had never been a latency before, not in her system, not unless someone tampered with it. She clicked deeper. The flagged event was from a domestic flight out of Seattle. Passenger, female, 64, Native American. Complaint, verbal harassment from gate agent, ignored by crew. Status, de-escalated. Resolution, inconclusive. Camille stared at the word. Inconclusive? That word didn't exist in her protocol. Every incident ended with verified, dismissed, or confirmed misconduct. Someone had altered the outcome, and that someone had access. She picked up her phone and dialed internal compliance. "Get me Ayanna," she said. "Now." Ayanna Brooks, 26, head of Ethics Corps' internal audit team, arrived in Camille's office 20 minutes later. No makeup, hair in a tight bun, tablet in hand. "You saw the report," Camille said without preamble. Ayanna nodded. "I pulled the logs. You're right. The metadata was wiped." "Who touched it?" Ayanna hesitated. "I traced it to a login from our Zurich node. But here's the thing. Zurich's not even live. And the credentials used, they're yours." Camille's eyes sharpened. "That's impossible. I haven't logged into Zurich in over a year." Ayanna slid the tablet across the desk. "Then someone cloned your access." That night, Camille didn't sleep. She paced, not in fear, but calculation. This wasn't sabotage from the outside. It was internal. And it wasn't random. It was surgical. She ran through her mental list of team leads. Only 3 people had root-level credentials to override the core logic. 2 of them were loyal. She would bet her life on it. That left one name: Declan Voss. Declan had joined Ethos Corps early. An Ivy League tech prodigy, white, charming, perfect for PR. He was the golden boy who gave interviews when Camille didn't want to. He liked cameras. Camille liked systems. They worked until now. She scheduled a private meeting with Declan the next morning. No assistance, no IT support. He walked in smiling like nothing was wrong. "Cam," he said, "I saw the anomaly. Little hiccup. We're looking into it. You altered the Seattle report." His smile faltered, just for a millisecond, but Camille saw it. "I didn't." She held up the tablet. "My login, routed through Zurich, time-stamped at 02:12 a.m. And guess who accessed Zurich via proxy at exactly 02:09. Declan didn't deny it. He just sighed. "Camille, you have to understand, this thing we built, it's too aggressive." Camille's voice was low, controlled. "You mean it's working?" Declan leaned forward. "I mean it's dangerous. Do you know how many partners are threatening to pull funding? 2 airlines in Asia, 1 European airport consortium. This ethics weapon of yours is making everyone nervous." She didn't blink. "Good." He stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "I've been approached, quietly. Investors want a lighter version, one with a delay buffer, more interpretive space, more gray. They're offering a buyout, $240 million for a limited rights fork of the system." Camille said nothing. Declan continued. "You don't have to run it. You can keep the core. Let them run the watered-down version. We make change. Gently." Her voice dropped. "There is no gentle version of justice, Declan. You either name the harm or you don't." He stood. "Think about it. I'm giving you an out, one where everyone still wins." Camille met his eyes, calm. "No, you're giving them an excuse to keep pretending they care." Later that day, Camille walked into the main server room. The hum of the data center was the only thing that made her feel grounded. Code didn't lie. It didn't spin. It either ran or it didn't. She input the final command herself. Declan Voss, access revoked. 5 seconds later, an automatic ethics review pinged to every executive in the network. Violation: unauthorized tampering with data integrity protocols. Status: termination pending. Public notice: activated. The system didn't care who he was, just what he'd done. That night, news broke online. Ethos Corps co-founder fired amid internal ethics breach. System integrity holds. Declan Voss ousted. Camille Ellis doubles down on zero-tolerance model. And under the headlines, something new began trending. Camille was right. The backlash was immediate. Some said Camille was too extreme. Others accused her of destroying a rising white tech star to protect her own control. But the people who mattered, the ones who had been silenced before, they showed up. In comments, in videos, in schools and boardrooms and airports. A woman from Detroit posted, My son was flagged as suspicious for wearing a hoodie on a flight. 3 weeks later, that airline's bias score dropped, and they issued a public apology. Camille didn't just build a system, she built justice with receipts. Camille didn't respond to the media. She didn't need to. The system had spoken for her, again. By Friday, she received a call from the UN Aviation Ethics Committee. They wanted to adopt a global version of Zahara Protocol, under Camille's direct supervision. She agreed, with one condition. Every version had to stay open source, immutable and traceable. No gray, no delay, just truth. At dinner that weekend, Zahara asked, "Was he your friend?" Camille took a long sip of tea before answering. He was someone who believed in the mission, until the mission threatened his position. Zahara blinked. So he switched sides? No, Camille said softly. He switched masks. Geneva was gray that morning, the kind of gray that didn't promise rain, but a long, slow reckoning. Camille Ellis stepped out of the black car with no security detail and no entourage, just a single briefcase in her hand and a thin silver chain around her wrist. The one Zahara gave her, inscribed, "Silence doesn't mean surrender." Across the courtyard, glass doors opened into the UN International Ethics Forum, an event normally reserved for diplomats and slow-moving resolutions. But not today. Today, Camille wasn't here to be diplomatic. She was here to codify accountability across oceans. Inside the conference hall, everything gleamed. Polished wood, pale marble, delegates in navy suits, translation headsets neatly folded over notepads. When Camille took her seat, some turned to look, some with admiration, some with concealed irritation, some with fear. They all knew what she had built. They just didn't know how much it could change them. The lead moderator adjusted his mic. "Ms. Ellis, thank you for being here. I trust your system's success has exceeded expectations." Camille didn't smile. Success depends on who you ask. For my daughter, it meant one less slap in silence. For 3 airlines, it meant $1.3 billion in frozen funding. He cleared his throat. Yes, well, your ethos core framework has certainly shifted the conversation. Good, she said calmly. That was the point. Camille presented for 27 minutes. No slides, no animation, just case studies. A Syrian refugee denied boarding in Italy, flagged and reversed within 18 minutes. A blind passenger in Toronto being offered last boarding, flagged and corrected in real time. A Muslim woman profiled mid-flight. Airline issued formal apology. Systemic retraining enforced through the dashboard. Then came the data. 92% of flagged cases showed verified bias. 19 international airports had quietly begun shadow trials. Passenger satisfaction scores rose 26% where Zahara Protocol was active. She ended with one line. "We don't need more apologies. We need tools that make apologies obsolete." The room was silent, not out of politeness, but calculation. Then the French delegate spoke. "Madame Ellis, some governments are concerned your platform places too much power in the hands of an individual." Camille tilted her head. "Is it the power you're worried about, or the fact that it's no longer yours?" The German delegate chimed in. "Transparency is good, but this system moves too fast. Without delay buffers, it could create diplomatic tension." Camille looked him dead in the eye. "Racism doesn't care about your timeline. Neither should accountability." That's when Minister Al-Sadi of the Emirates stood up. "Ms. Ellis," he said with a quiet elegance, "would your system flag my niece for wearing a niqab in first class?" Camille answered gently. "If someone harasses her for it, yes." "And what if your system embarrasses the airline in the process?" "Then they should be embarrassed." Her words hit like a bell. Clear, unapologetic, true. That night, back in her hotel suite overlooking Lake Geneva, Camille reviewed her inbox. There were 3 offers, from a Swiss bank to license Ethos Core under a sanitized corporate name, from an airline alliance in Southeast Asia, asking to delay real-time reporting by 72 hours, from a private lobby group in DC, offering $60 million to integrate interpretive filters before compliance scores were published. Camille didn't even open the attachments. She deleted all 3. Then came the text that shook her. From Mason FA message, urgent, internal pushback, possible override attempt, call me. She stepped out onto the balcony. Cold air, still lake. Camille called. Mason answered instantly. They're coming for the system. Who? Not foreign. Domestic. One of the Senate committees is drafting an emergency clause. They want to freeze Ethos Core under data security risk. Camille's voice didn't shake. What do they want in exchange? Control, oversight, a pause, a seat at the code level. Camille stared out over Geneva. They're mistaking reform for rebellion. No, Mason replied. They're mistaking transparency for threat. The next morning, Camille requested an emergency session. She stood alone before a board of 12. Behind her, massive screens lit up with data from Zahara Protocol's international deployments. She didn't make a speech. She asked a question. Do you want to live in a world where dignity depends on who's watching? Or one where dignity is built into the system, regardless of who's in the room? They didn't answer. But 24 hours later, the UN committee issued a statement. The Zahara Protocol shall be recognized as the first international standard of ethics-based real-time compliance. Full deployment begins in Q1. Lead architect, Camille Ellis. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., the senators pushing for the shutdown were hit with something they didn't expect. A bipartisan coalition of mothers, black, brown, white, indigenous, showed up at the Capitol. No yelling, just stories, one by one. My son was humiliated. My daughter cried the whole flight. They called my husband suspicious because he was deaf. Then they held up a simple sign. Let Camille work. By week's end, the override attempt collapsed. And Camille, she didn't celebrate. She booked a quiet flight home. Coach. No one recognized her. She sat by the window, closed her eyes, and whispered, "We're not done." It started with an envelope. No name, no stamp. Just the word Zahara scribbled on the front. Camille found it on the kitchen table one Sunday morning. It wasn't there the night before. She'd checked the locks. She always checked the locks. Inside, a single Polaroid photo of Zahara at school, taken from a distance, clearly without her knowing. On the back, in smudged ink, shut it down, or she gets grounded next. Camille's stomach didn't drop. It tightened. Grounded. A word chosen carefully. Aviation slang. But this wasn't about planes. This was a warning. And it wasn't idle. She didn't call the police. Not yet. Camille moved fast. Encrypted Zahara's school routes. Activated the emergency location protocol built into her daughter's smartwatch and rerouted all calls through the Sky Ethics security relay. Everything ran through silent systems, the way she designed them to. By noon, she was on the phone with Mason at the FAA. They're not just after the protocol anymore, she said. They're coming through my daughter. Mason's voice darkened. Do you want private federal protection? No, that's too loud. You can't fight this alone. I'm not. She sent one message through an encrypted loop to Ayanna Brooks. Ayanna responded with a single line. I'll trace the source. Don't log into anything without my check. Then she went dark. Camille didn't panic. She prepared. 2 hours later, a second photo arrived. This time, not in her home. It was slid under her office door at Ethos Core. Same handwriting. This time, Zahara at the airport, holding her little rolling backpack. But Camille had never taken Zahara to that terminal, and that image wasn't from the past. It was from the future. Photoshopped, fabricated, threat theater, but with inside access. Camille now knew two things. Whoever was behind this had internal system visibility, and they were trying to scare her into silence by targeting what mattered most. She activated Lockdown Level 3. Her staff didn't even know what that was. The protocols had never been used before. But suddenly, screens across the building went dark. A voice message looped. System audit in progress. Please stand by. Only 3 people could still access core systems. Camille, Ayanna, and an anonymous systems engineer known only by the tag nullroot. a former whistleblower turned shadow partner who helped Camille harden her protocols against foreign interference. She called him. "You see the breach?" she asked. "Yes," he replied from an unknown location. "It didn't come from outside." She expected that. "Tell me." "It's someone using FAA clearance. Not yours. Someone higher. And, Camille, they're mirroring Zahara's movements in real time, satellite level." Camille closed her eyes. This wasn't a hacker. It was a state-aligned asset, someone who had access to federal infrastructure. That night, Camille didn't go home. She took Zahara to a safe house she'd prepped months ago. Just in case. A place with no Wi-Fi, no digital footprints, just trees, an old wooden floor, and shelves filled with paper books. Zahara asked, "Are we hiding?" Camille answered honestly, "We're protecting the work, and you." Zahara nodded slowly. Then she did something Camille hadn't seen in weeks. She smiled. "Can we light the fireplace?" Camille laughed softly. "We don't even have wood yet." "I'll find some," Zahara said, and walked out with a little woven basket like it was a game. Camille watched her daughter disappear into the tree line and whispered to herself, "They'll never touch her. Never." Back in the city, Ayana resurfaced with findings. The breach came from a private contractor linked to a federal ethics oversight committee, the same committee that tried to delay the Zahara Protocol's international deployment 2 weeks ago. Ayana's text: "They're trying to flag your system as emotionally compromised, using Zahara's security files as proof of bias." Camille understood immediately. They weren't trying to kill her daughter. They were trying to paint Camille as unstable, unfit to lead an international ethics protocol. They wanted the system, just not under a black woman's control. She didn't flinch. She moved. The next morning, Camille released an untraceable, anonymous data drop to 5 global news agencies. Inside the file, proof of attempted override on FAA servers, corrupted login trails leading to the private contractor, and 2 photos, side by side, the real Zahara and the faked image planted in Camille's office. She included no names, just this caption: "Justice isn't biased, but power always pretends it is, when it's not the one in control." By midday, it was trending on every platform. #Zahara Protocol, #Protect Ethics, #Let Her Lead. CNN ran a special. BBC aired a segment titled "Digital Justice Under Attack." Even Fox News had to grudgingly admit, the targeting of Camille Ellis's daughter may have just backfired. That night, Camille sat beside Zahara in the cabin. They made hot cocoa over a tiny fire Zahara had finally lit. Her daughter looked up and said, "You're not scared, are you?" Camille looked at her. "No," she whispered. "I'm furious." The Capitol building never looked smaller. Not to Camille Ellis. Not today. As she stepped out of the black car in a sharp gray suit and low heels, the world watched. Literally. CNN, MSNBC, even Al Jazeera had cameras trained on the white steps leading to the U.S. Senate hearing room. She didn't stop to pose. She didn't need to. The name Camille Ellis already carried more weight than any title they could have given her. "Ms. Ellis, do you believe the ethics cascade protocol was manipulated?" one reporter shouted. She didn't answer. "Did you leak the contractor's identity?" another yelled. Still no response. But just before the door shut behind her, Camille turned slightly and said loud enough for the mics to pick up, "I didn't leak anything. I just held up a mirror." Inside, the room was cold. Not in temperature, in intent. 13 senators, seated behind polished mahogany desks, each with binders of papers, prepared questions, and a very clear motive: to discredit her before she became unstoppable. The chairman tapped his gavel. "This hearing is now in session. We are here to review the actions and governance structure of the Ethos Core compliance system, as well as the security breaches surrounding its architect." He looked directly at Camille. "You may begin, Ms. Ellis." She didn't start with credentials. She didn't list her degrees. She didn't need a PowerPoint. She simply began. "My name is Camille Ellis. I built a system that makes sure power doesn't go unchecked, especially when no one's watching. A week ago, someone threatened my daughter to stop that system from expanding globally. So today, I'm not here to defend myself. I'm here to put you on the record. That landed harder than any headline. Senator Blake from Texas leaned forward. Ms. Ellis, are you suggesting members of this body were involved in that threat? No, she said plainly. I'm suggesting that some of you tried to bury the evidence of it. And when that failed, you tried to question my mental stability to remove me from my own creation. Gasps, whispers. But Camille kept going. I've documented every override attempt, every server ping, every unauthorized login, and I've handed that evidence over to the Office of Federal Ethics and 3 international watchdogs. So if you're planning to deny it, do it under oath. Senator Kowalski from Michigan tried a different angle. Let's discuss your system, Ms. Ellis. Some believe it's too aggressive, that it doesn't give people, especially flight crew, the benefit of the doubt before flagging them. Camille raised an eyebrow. Did they say that before or after they slapped my daughter? Dead silence. She leaned in. Bias doesn't wait for context. It acts. And so should justice. The Zahara Protocol doesn't punish. It monitors. It doesn't accuse. It reports. If you're afraid of being watched, maybe it's not the system you fear. Maybe it's your own record. A few seats down, Senator Monroe, one of the few women in the room, surprised everyone. She asked, Ms. Ellis, if the system is so fair, why does it only seem to target Western Airlines? Camille nodded. I'm glad you asked. She pressed a button on her tablet. A large screen lit up behind her, showing real-time global compliance scores, anonymized, but precise. Ethos Core doesn't target, she said. It measures. And if Western Airlines are showing more violations, maybe that says something about their behavior, not my algorithm. A wave of murmurs filled the room. One senator whispered, she came armed. Then, the chairman tried to shift the narrative. Let's talk money. You froze over $1.3 billion in compliance-linked capital across multiple airlines. Isn't that economic overreach? Camille folded her hands calmly. Those airlines signed binding contracts stating that if they violated ethics protocols, especially ones involving children, race, or disability, their funding would freeze until a full audit. They weren't tricked. They were trusted. And they failed. She let that sit. And let's be honest, if I were a white male CEO named Charles with a hedge fund background, we wouldn't be having this hearing. The room didn't clap, but the public did. Across the nation, live comments flooded social media. She's cooking them. Camille for president. This is what accountability looks like. Outside the hearing, a crowd was forming. Parents, activists, pilots, former flight attendants. They weren't chanting. They were standing. In quiet solidarity, each holding a sign with a single sentence. I was flagged, and I deserved it. Back in the room, the chairman grew visibly agitated. Ms. Ellis, this isn't a trial. You're not a prosecutor. Camille replied softly. Then stop acting like you're on defense. He scowled. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we close this hearing? Camille stood, reached into her folder, and pulled out a document. Yes, I'm filing this with the Senate Oversight Committee. It's a formal request to designate the Zahara Protocol as an international public good, immune to private acquisition or government override. Gasps again. She continued, if accepted, it becomes the first ethics system protected under the Geneva Digital Accountability Treaty. That means not even you can dismantle it. She didn't wait for their response. She turned, nodded to the press, and walked out. Outside, she found Zahara waiting on the steps, holding hands with Ayana. Zahara ran up, eyes shining. You didn't cry this time, she said proudly. Camille laughed, hugging her tightly. No, baby, this time they did. It should have passed in seconds. The vote was scheduled for 9:00 a.m. sharp. A simple count, a public record. The Zahara Protocol would either be enshrined as a protected international system or killed quietly with a technicality. Camille sat in the gallery of the Senate chamber with Zahara beside her. legs swinging off the seat, earbuds in, sketching something in a tiny notebook. Ayanna was 2 rows behind, flanked by cybersecurity advisors and 2 federal observers from Canada and the EU. This was supposed to be the end of the road. Instead, it was a trap. At 9:03 a.m., the chairman of the Senate Committee on Digital Infrastructure cleared his throat. There's been a delay. One of the deciding votes has requested a review of Section 4B, specifically the clause that grants immunity from governmental override. The vote will be postponed until further examination is complete. Camille didn't blink, but Ayanna's phone buzzed. A message flashed from one of her internal analysts. Section 4B flagged for legal contradiction, triggered by Senator Whitlow's office. This wasn't random. Camille leaned into Ayanna. They're trying to bury it through procedure. Ayanna whispered, No, they're trying to make you blink first. Camille stood up and walked out. She didn't storm. She floated. A dozen cameras caught the movement. Within minutes, headlines read, Zahara vote delayed. Ellis leaves without comment. Powerful allies missing from floor. But what the press didn't see was the man waiting for her outside in the marble corridor. Camille, she turned. Standing near the bronze statue of Eleanor Roosevelt was Noah Wynne, her former advisor, her former co-architect on the original Ethos core structure. Also, the man who walked away 2 years ago, just before she launched the Zahara protocol. His hair was grayer now. He didn't look guilty, just worn. You picked a great day to ghost back in, she said dryly. I didn't ghost, he said. I was told to step away or be blacklisted. By who? Noah looked at her hard. You know who, the same people who just flagged 4B. Camille clenched her jaw. You knew they'd block the vote. Noah nodded. They don't want to kill the protocol outright. They want to take it, then water it down until it means nothing. Why are you here now? He reached into his coat, pulled out a thin folder. Because I kept a back door. Camille's eyes narrowed. What do you mean, a back door? Noah looked her in the eye. I mean, I built a silent fallback key, one that automatically locks the Zahara protocol into international compliance if the Senate vote fails under procedural abuse. But it can only be activated by both of us. Camille's mind raced. You never told me you kept access. I was trying to protect it and protect you. Noah, you don't get to rewrite history like that. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Camille. I'm offering a way to finish what we started. Back in her hotel suite, Camille stared at the folder. Inside were lines of code, legacy access credentials tied to the original Global Ethics Cascade node stationed under a cybersecurity partnership in Geneva. It had never been activated. Because if it was, it would automatically link the Zahara protocol to the Geneva Digital Accountability Treaty, essentially making it untouchable by any one government, including the US. But it had one catch. Both architects, Camille and Noah, had to approve the trigger, biometrically. That night, Camille sat with Zahara on the edge of the hotel bed. You okay if we don't go home right away? She asked. Zahara shrugged. We never go home after a big moment. You like to walk it off in another country. Camille laughed. Smart kid. By morning, they were in Geneva. They didn't tell anyone. Camille left a message for Ayanna. If the vote fails, check the ETH timestamp. You'll know. At 3:12 p.m. local time, inside a private tech observatory beneath Lake Geneva, Camille and Noah stood in front of 2 consoles. A glass interface lit up in soft blue. Confirm dual auth for treaty integration. Warning, irreversible trigger. Camille took a breath. Noah placed his hand on the pad first. Then Camille followed. The screen blinked. AUTH matched. Zahara protocol. Status. Treaty bound. Global override. Authority. Revoked sovereign control. Locked. 10 seconds later, the system notified 7 entities. FAA. EU Aviation Authority. Transport Canada. ICAO. World Ethics Council. United Nations Digital Security Division. US Senate Oversight Committee. And then, a second message. Triggered protocol. Section 4B override abuse detected, congressional vote voided. International rule applied. Meanwhile, back in D.C., Senator Whitlow stared at her screen as her aide whispered, "Ma'am, the vote didn't matter." "What?" "The Zahara Protocol's been moved to Geneva. They locked us out." At the same moment, the press received an official statement. As of 4:15 p.m. CET, the Zahara Protocol is no longer under U.S. jurisdiction. It is now an international protected ethics framework recognized under Article 7 of the Geneva Digital Treaty. This decision was made in response to procedural obstruction by select Senate parties. Camille didn't smile. She just closed her laptop and leaned back in the quiet observatory. Zahara peeked in through the door. "Mom?" "Yeah, baby." Zahara grinned. "Can we get waffles now?" Camille nodded. "Yeah, we earned them." The Geneva news conference was over in 23 minutes, but the aftershock would last years. Within 72 hours of Camille activating the Zahara Protocol as a treaty-bound system, everything shifted. 3 U.S. senators were placed under investigation for ethics violations and obstruction of federal transparency laws. The FAA issued an emergency compliance directive to all U.S.-based airlines. 42 airports, including JFK, LAX, Heathrow, and Haneda, adopted the real-time Zahara Compliance Index as part of passenger boarding protocols. But Camille wasn't in front of a camera anymore. She was sitting in the corner of a quiet cafe in Brussels. No press, no fanfare. Just her, Zahara, Ayana, and a pot of bitter black tea. Ayana was the first to speak. "You know what this means, right? They're gonna come for you harder now." Camille gave a half smile. "They already did. I'm still here." "You could lead this whole thing officially. Chair the International Ethics Council. Become the face of it." Camille didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked over at Zahara, who was doodling quietly, drawing airplanes with smiley faces and little heart trails behind them. "I didn't build this for power," Camille finally said. "I built it because one day my daughter was going to fly without me, and I needed to know the sky was accountable." Ayana leaned back. "So, what now?" Camille reached into her bag, pulled out a sealed envelope, and handed it to Ayana. "Your name's on it now. The system's yours." Ayana blinked. "Wait, are you serious?" Camille nodded. "I built the frame. You're the future." Ayana opened the envelope slowly. Inside was the primary passphrase seed, the only key left to program long-term updates to the Zahara Protocol without Camille's biometrics. "I don't know what to say," Ayana whispered. "Just say you'll protect the kids who can't speak for themselves yet." Ayana nodded, eyes damp. That same night, a short video went viral on every major platform. It showed a flight attendant confronting a 6-year-old black girl in first class, screaming that she didn't belong. The girl didn't speak. She simply pressed the glowing blue emblem on her backpack, a discreet Zahara tag, and sat still. 2 minutes later, the crew was notified by HQ. Flight flagged. Ground upon landing. Review pending. Camille watched the video in silence. Zahara was asleep, curled next to her in the hotel bed, breathing softly. The new world didn't shout. It didn't beg. It simply documented and acted. That was the power Camille had dreamed of. The next morning, Camille declined a formal award from the UN Ethics Commission. In her note, she wrote, "Systems are not built to honor individuals. They're built to protect the invisible, the silenced, and the overlooked. I don't need a stage. I just need the code to run clean." Camille Ellis. 3 weeks later, headlines were still running. Zahara Protocol reshapes global aviation. Former Senate chair resigns amid scandal. Camille Ellis vanishes from public eye after ethics revolution. No one knew exactly where she went, but every time a child presses that blue tag, every time a silent injustice gets flagged mid-flight, her legacy whispers through the system. Because the real revolution didn't scream. It watched. It recorded. And it rewrote the rules. In silence. Now let us ask you something. If this were your child, Would you stay silent? Or would you rebuild the whole system like Camille did? Tell us where you're watching from and what you think justice should look like in today's world. Because sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones that don't need to raise their tone. We'll be reading your comments, every single one.